me, I spend half my time as a remote freelance design consultant and the other half as a woodworker. And I live in a little cottage next to a forest in the countryside. So a big hello from Sussex in the United Kingdom, where we are. On the woodworking side, there is Abdullah, my husband, next to me, and my business partner. And we have a small workshop together, as Louis and Tom mentioned, and we make bespoke furniture and sculpture at Nafisi Studio. On the other hand, I am a remote design consultant, and this is my office. So I've now been working remotely for 1 year now, and it's really weird because 90% of the people that I work with, I've never met before in person. So it feels unusual. Generally, I work with teams for short contracts to fill an interim role gap, such as a design manager or a design program manager. And I do coaching on specific design needs. I've been doing this from my studio, from my home, all with online video calls and project management softwares. But remote is not new to me. Before that, I did 3 years at Facebook in London as a senior product designer. And we were working with about 30 different distributed teams across multiple time zones. So it was actually my manager at Facebook who put the idea in my head of mapping my capacity as a percentage. Now, I love visualizing process. So this idea got me really excited. So today I'm going to share with you some tactics I have developed that have helped me personally, as well as the teams I've worked with, to coping in this new remote world. Who can relate to having a calendar like this? Yeah, back to back, chock-a-blocker. So for the first half of this year, I was managing a team of 6 product designers, fully remote at the start of COVID in the lockdown in the UK. And when I joined the team, I asked them, what challenges are you facing about working remotely? What do you think was their main challenge? Too many meetings. They said, Kate, we have too many meetings, with their hands on their forehead, looking at the Zoom call. I can barely fit a toilet break in, let alone enough time to focus on my work. They said, the extra hours I'm working are because I just can't concentrate during my day. And my commute time has been absorbed by my working hours instead of it being saved. So I decided to put my investigation hat on and kind of work out what's going on. So we started by visually mapping out all the meetings in an average week, with the idea to reflect this visual back to the team and open up a discussion of how would we like it to look? What would an ideal week be like? So most teams don't have some snazzy software where you can see inside each other's calendars in an effective way. But in an office scenario, in a physical space, you can see who you're working with. And you can tap them on the shoulder and you can ask them how they're doing, and you can ask them if they're free for a chat. So this lack of visual and spatial awareness of a teammate has meant remote working requires more transparency to see across teams and understand what they're up to. So what did I learn? The designers were having squad stand-ups. These were cross-functional team meetings, as well as design-only stand-ups every morning, due to the complexity of the product, but also an attempt to try and fix some of the alignment issues they were having. Now, pre-COVID, we all know stand-up as a maximum 10-minute meeting. You do a quick fire round, you stand in a huddle in whatever room you're in, and you discuss what are you up to that day and any blockers that you might have. Now it takes on an additional function. It's all about team bonding. It's about that human contact. It's about not feeling alone, as we are all in our different isolated boxes across the world. So it's really healthy to acknowledge this shift and this change in function, and that it's okay that it might take 30 minutes a day. It's okay that we spend more time on what's important to get us through this period. The team were also acclimatizing to new tools, such as moving from Slack to Microsoft Teams, from Google Docs to Microsoft Suite of products. And for most of them, they'd never used these tools before COVID. So as well as shifting their design work from Sketch to Figma, they also created a lot of daily admin. This was up to 1 hour a day. So designers were feeling better when we actually acknowledged this. And we said, yep, it's understandable that you're spending this time. It's okay, they felt relieved. So juggling back-to-back calls meant that we weren't always taking a lunch break. We had lots of one-on-one meetings where we had a pasta bowl in one hand and maybe a child or a cat in another. And although that's okay and we want to be, informal and caring and understanding of each other, I also wanted to make sure that everybody in the team had a full 1 hour break. So we put that in the calendar and we made sure that it was blocked out every day ahead of time. So all the designers were seen as not being available for meetings during this precious downtime. And we added in all of their team meetings into the week, which was a lot, as you can see. There was barely 4 hours of free space. So we started to evaluate, do we really need these meetings? So we pulled out lots of meetings that didn't have clear agendas. For large group updates, we chose one representative of the design team to take notes on behalf of everybody else. And this avoided about 5 people going for 1 hour. When they didn't need to be. And we changed the cadence of weeks as well. So some meetings we made them bi-weekly or monthly where we could. And we implemented the 20-50-minute rule. I'm sure lots of you are employing some of these tactics right now where you book a 20-minute meeting instead of 30 and a 50-minute meeting instead of 60. And this avoids back-to-back meetings and gives you 10 minutes to have a break, a cup of tea, stretch your legs. And lastly, we decided that we didn't need to stand up on Friday. We were already aligning in the beginning of the week. And so we already had 2 design meetings, as you can see, on the Friday as well. So we didn't really need to sync. So we grouped these key activities and added up their totals. So we went from previously only having 4 hours of focus time to now having 10. That's double the focus time. And this really helped us to reflect on our priorities. When this exercise is repeated regularly, it also helps you to observe the shifts from very, very collaborative weeks to very heavy solo work weeks. The key shift we wanted to achieve was making sure that the largest time investment that the designer was making is in their focus time. Sometimes you'll need a lot more team meetings, for example, when you're road mapping or when you're pivoting a product. Sometimes you'll need a lot more design focus time when you're doing a design system overhaul or a heuristic product review or a design sprint. So visualize these potential options to make the decision process more democratic. And visualize these potential options to make the decision-making more intentional instead of it happening as an afterthought. Obviously, a week will look very different depending on the product or project, but this is an average week for us, and the designers felt much more comfortable with this, which left these blocks of time, 10 lots of 1 hour slots a week. I stared at these little white blocks and thought, with time split up into such small chunks, it's difficult to deliver and enter into the flow state. Flow. The flow state is the most joyful part of my week. The flow state was coined by psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and this is when you completely get immersed in an activity. He says the ego falls away, time flies, every action, movement, and thought follows inevitably from the previous one, like playing jazz. Your whole being is involved, and you're just using your skills to the utmost. To have job satisfaction, you need to make time to enter the flow state. And this is something that my colleagues were really missing out on. And I remembered a study that had been read by Gloria Mark at the University of California. Gloria and her team were researching work fragmentation, which is all about the break in continuous work activity. They found out that when interrupted, it takes on average 23 minutes and 15 seconds to get back to the task. I wanted to calculate how much time were we wasting due to work fragmentation. So let's round it down to 20 minutes. So if my designers were spending about 20 minutes of each of their 1 hour blocks trying to refocus, then this means they were spending 40 minutes a day or 200 minutes a week. That's about 3.3 hours a week. That's quite a lot. And in a month, that became 13.3 hours. And in a year, that's 6.6 whole days just trying to refocus when you've been interrupted. So we took a look at these focus blocks in their calendars again, and we decided to move them together, to push them up to be 2-hour slots to reduce the interruptions. So now their calendars looked more like this. And crucially, for each of us, we blocked off this time every day, every week, to make sure that nobody booked over this time with other meetings. And it's important to note here that this slide is not advocating everybody avoids meetings in the morning or that designers go on a meeting strike, but it's saying that by intentionally planning your calendar and using this exercise with your team, you can have a much more enjoyable week. This action alone saved the team of 6 people 520 hours collectively in a week, or 21.6 days worth of time back to be in the flow state. Imagine this as a cost. Times this by your hourly rate and start thinking about that implication. When working remotely, it can feel like one large blur if we don't architect the week consciously. So what are our observations of this experiment? Over a few weeks, we could see that designers were getting better at booking their focus time in their calendars. And this increase in self-awareness created an increase in efficiency. And when the designers presented at critique, they were actually sharing more thoughtful work. More focused time led to the team being more joyful and happier. I can hear some of you say, yeah, but my team would never stick to this, or I can't work in the morning. What I would say to you is you can join up your focus blocks in your own calendar at the times of days that suit you. You might be in a night owl. You can also agree with your team, sit down together and have a discussion. What slots work best for everyone to avoid back-to-back context switching? And maybe you can start to have even a no meeting Wednesday culture. So the first step is to have a team conversation about visualizing your capacity as a team. And what are those pro behaviors? A pro will always book time in advance. A pro will prioritize longer blocks of uninterrupted time by saying no to clashing meetings and postponing and proposing an alternative. And a pro will lead by example and avoid booking over other people's focus time. What I want you to take away is that booking focus time is not selfish. Saying no and proposing an alternative time is the best way for your team to get your best work from you. So, what was the next challenge my remote team was facing? Low visibility. No one on my team had a firm idea of what each other was doing all day. Now imagine you're in a basketball team and the players don't know what position each of their teammates is playing. Chaos. So at least in the office, you can physically see whereabouts people are. You can quickly tap them on the shoulder and find out what they're doing without looking nosy. But in between feeding kids, answering the door to the postman, and interacting with family members, time feels very subjective. So I spoke to each of the designers to understand why they were craving more visibility. And this is what I heard. Kate, I'm worried about people thinking that I'm not working, so I'm working double. And I can't take on any more work. I'm just completely overwhelmed. And I have some spare capacity, but it's been a crazy month, so I need some downtime. And then from a lead or from managers, they were seeing issues like, I don't know how thin my team is spread across initiatives whilst they're adjusting to working from home. And I can't manage expectations to upper management for the team delivery timelines and recruiting based on just stand-ups. And lastly, I can't help unblock my team if I don't know what time trade-offs they are making and why. So I quickly realized that we needed a way to facilitate a conversation about capacity without judgmental language or a sense of micromanaging people's time. Ideally, it would be designer-led and shared in a visual tool. If only I knew a visual collaboration tool that could enhance remote communications. Figma came to the rescue. So I'm going to share with you a tactical tool that I made in Figma which you can fill out with your team in about 10 to 15 minutes. So here we have a team of 5 people. We established earlier that my team, on average, had about 10 hours of focus time a week. So each column represents a week's worth of focus time with 10 blocks. And 1 hour is 1 block, or 10% of their heads down solo focus time. So I asked each of the designers what projects they were working on and by what percentage they would split their focus time across these projects. Then they could see how many hours this would give them to complete their tasks. And as a group, we could reflect on if we felt this was actually realistic or not. So the designers are the ones writing their own expectations. And what was interesting at first was if someone had 2 projects, say in this example, they would give each project equal weighting. So I said, okay, let's see if we can actually gauge how long the task will take. So I asked them to start putting their priority at the top in blue. And this allowed them to think about what is the most important task that I have to do. And it opened up a discussion for us, not just on how many projects do I have, but how long are they really going to take me? And how much more of my time does this one take than another? And it really created focus. What is the one thing I need to accomplish this week? Simple question, but difficult to answer. As we filled the form out, interesting things started to happen. We could see that some people were split across 2 work streams and some across 5. So the workload wasn't really that evenly balanced across our team. We could also see quickly if what we were hoping to achieve was actually over 10-hour capacity limit. So this person here, number 4, is 1 hour over time. We could also see if people in the team had spare capacity. So person number 5 has 1 hour extra. Now, the team I was working on was severely understaffed. So it was very rare that someone said, oh yeah, I have some spare capacity, unless it was a new team member who was temporarily ramping up on the job. But this is okay, because it is through these visually facilitated conversations that designers felt more able to ask for help and to do it proactively. So what we started to see was less of people not saying anything, crossing their fingers, hoping for the best, and then either missing a deadline or asking for help last minute. So that was a positive change. So this is my team, the cursors in Figma filling out their capacity template. I've made the project names a little bit blurry, but I'm hoping that you can see that this is a very collaborative thing. It's something that you can do by yourself, but it's also something you can do together. And I'm wondering if you can picture those weeks in your own jobs where you have had no tangible outcome to show for your efforts. Perhaps you have been in alignment meetings or brainstorms and you haven't actually done some physical design work for a long time. It's summarizing these types of activities over the month and visualizing the effort and time you've put into them that really helps us to reflect on the outcome of our efforts so that we can focus on how effective we really were rather than how effective we may have felt or perceived it to be. And I found this tracking and reflection on my personal progress especially reassuring during the backdrop of the overall COVID anxiety. The other area that we considered is how to gauge if our estimates are accurate. Each week we noticed designers would get better and better at estimating their time because they were involved in this self-reflection. And if the task wasn't complete one week, then we were given extra time the following week to make sure that we got it done. So factoring in our weekly learnings made this process more accurate each time. So what did we observe? We observed the rewarding nature of getting better at estimating. It doesn't feel good when you don't finish the things that you said you would. But by practicing this exercise, you pleasantly will be surprised how you improve on that. And confidence to communicate timelines. So by focusing on the top priorities and better estimating, designers were more confident to tell their teams what their expected outputs would be and when. And lastly, the original problem was about low visibility. And this is because this exercise is a group one. It allows everybody to more easily see what everyone's up to. It also helped to advocate getting new headcount because we could prove that we were consistently over capacity. So that tracking really helped. What does a pro do? A pro keeps records of task time. This means roughly keeping note of time spent on a task. Some people use time tracking software. I prefer to use it just as a pen and paper. It's not for anyone else, it's for you, and it's to help you make your own estimations better. A pro communicates priority daily. A pro reprioritizes daily to accomplish the most impactful piece of work. You drop something or postpone something that is lower priority. We can't do everything. We have to make tough decisions, otherwise we burn out. And most importantly, we have to communicate that priority with our team so that we're aligned. We can't just disappear on them. And thirdly, a pro builds clarity of the team's distribution of work. So to create more transparency and trust around work expectations. So if all of that sounds very useful and that you're excited to kind of get calculating your week immediately and you can picture it in your head, then you can search on the Figma community for team capacity templates, and you will find the Figma file that I've published, and you can see all the instructions inside of how to use it. And you can see the capacity calculator, which was made by Tom, who mentioned earlier, who's a very clever plugin creator and helped bring this to life. And you can use this to calculate how much focus time do you actually have in a week? How much focus time would you like? And when you do have projects that you need to spend and focus time on, how are you going to split your focus time across those projects? And it will tell you if you're over or under capacity. So please check it out. Give me feedback via Twitter on how you're using it or how the changes that you'd like to see in this template. Or reach out to me on LinkedIn to chat about these topics further. Thank you so much. Stay well, stay safe, and thank you very much.